Welcome everyone to True House Stories. I am Lenny Fontana coming out of NYC and only
Good evening.
rocking in 1983. Little Run DMC, everybody. Little Run DMC for you. So tonight we are graced by his presence, a senior lecturer of of creative media. I always thought known as a professor, but I mean,
no, there's a lot of hard work goes into being a professor.
That's right. But he is a professor. He's a professor of music.
No.
He's a professor of music.
Senior lecturer.
Hang on. Senior lecturer, professor, technician.
Okay. You say so.
Let's give it even better. Turntable technician.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Part of an institution of a famous brand called the Hacienda, along with Mike Pickering from M People, created a humongous, homogenous story that is huge. The story is bigger than us at times.
Absolutely.
It's huger than us. Okay.
Absolutely.
Also has been blessed to given us the Hacienda Classical. And he'll talk
Yeah.
We'll talk about that as well. He is a soul boy by heart.
I think so, yeah.
Soul music. He rides a bike in the mud to get
a mountain bike, yeah.
He's a mountain biker. He's a remixer. He's a producer. And don't forget, he's a presenter. Because Graeme Park presented a lot of radio shows, and I want to thank him also for always supporting Lenny Fontana and Karmic Power Records and all the artists that he's been involved in. Quick little story, real quick before we start, because we'll get into the first story, which was I walked into Ministry of Sound.
Yes.
Packed, and I went up in the booth. I'm hanging out with him, and I just mentioned in his ear, I said, I got this new track I just mixed. Would you want to play it? And he says, you got it with you? I said, no, it's in the booth, because in those days I came from 2 other gigs. He says, no.
Yeah.
Okay. I gave him the acetate. Didn't even listen to it. Took it from me, put it on the turntable, and rocked the whole thing. Crowd went mad.
If Lenny Fontana gives you an acetate, then you play it.
Okay. So
there's not many people I would do that to, you know. I mean, now the modern equivalent is people will turn up and say, I've got something on my phone or my USB, and then you just go away.
Yeah, USB.
You know?
How is that?
Yeah.
Anyway, so he grabbed it from the. I literally brought it like the Holy Grail. I brought it one like this, and I could hear ta-da! Like I could hear the music and hand it to him, and it looked like a movie. And the place, the smoke, and it's hot, and then people going crazy, ministry like this. And I think it was a Hacienda night he was doing. This is early 90s.
Yeah, well, when Ministry Sound opened, I was the original Friday night resident. It was me, Paul Oakenfold, and guests, So it would probably have been a Friday night in the early days. When the DJ booth was in a different part of the main room.
Yes, when they moved it from the original upstairs and they down to the first side of the room, which is now when you walk in, the room, it's on the other side. But that was the first secondary booth from when the original.
That's right, yeah.
So welcome and thank you for gracing us, Your Excellency, from the UK.
Steady.
So, first question we ask everyone, because the numbers are screaming. They're starting to bang. How does music find you, or you find music as a young lad?
Well, that's a very easy question to answer. My late grandpa, who was my mum's dad, had his own big band. He had his own orchestra, the George Wood Orchestra, based out of Aberdeen in Scotland. And I spent most summers in Aberdeen with my grandparents, and I just thought he was amazing, my grandpa. And he played clarinet, and he played a violin, or as we call it in Scotland, a fiddle.
Oh, really?
And there was lots of photographs, black and white photographs of him in his tuxedo with his orchestra, with slicked down hair, 1940s, 1950s photographs, and I just thought it was amazing. And he plays clarinet, and but in the meantime, at home, my mom, who used to be a singer, would play just loads of great music, a lot of Motown and a lot of Stax, And the radio was always on. So that's how I kind of fell in love with music. And at the age of, I started collecting records when I was about 6 or 7, T-Rex,
Right.
The Sweet. There's some people we can't mention anymore. Gary Glitter. But
Wait a minute. Why are we looking back? Like, is somebody coming in the room? Wait.
No. It's
Graham,
theatrical.
Graham, we can't say that.
Okay. And then used to watch. We had a TV show in the UK called Top of the Pops.
Oh
and,
that show.
Yeah, and that was Essential View. So I just loved music, and the kind of at the age of 11, my grandpa, his arthritis was so bad he had to give up playing, and he gave me his clarinet, and I couldn't believe this. My grandpa, who I adored, was giving me his clarinet. So I started clarinet lessons, and then ended up in the school orchestra. But of course, this was like at the age of 13, 14, when you start discovering girls and you get into fashion and you see Roxy Music on Top of the Pops. And you go, that's what I want to do. And then you discover the Clash and the Sex Pistols. And the Clash and the Sex Pistols make you look back and discover the New York Dolls and Iggy and the Stooges. And that's when you think, all right, I want to play saxophone. So guess what? I got a Saturday job, and I was the envy of everyone in my school. I got the Saturday job in the local independent record store in Kirkcaldy in Scotland, right? And that was like an education, because I got the job because I was always in there buying new stuff, right? And used to go there after school. And one day after school, they said, hey, you're in here all the time. You buy good music. Do you want to help us out? And then do you want a Saturday job? And that meant just getting to hear anything and everything. But I've always had eclectic tastes. So I love punk rock because it was dangerous and it was angry, but also because all my friends liked progressive rock and I just wanted to be different, right? But while I was enjoying the Clash and looking back and discovering the New York Dolls, and by the way, rest in peace, Sylvain, who left us the other week, but I was also in the record shop. Remember like the day I Feel Love, Donna Summer arrived, 1977, I was 14. So in amongst the punk rock in the shop, you'd put on I Feel Love, the 12-inch version, and it'd be like, whoa, what the hell? This is mind-blowing. So I've always had eclectic taste. So I managed to save up money, buy a saxophone, and I got kind of kicked out of the school orchestra for not reading the music. I would learn the parts and play it, but the conductor would go, Park, you're not reading the music, because you could tell I was playing the right notes, but not following his cues and not reading the music. So instead of going do 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 do, I was kind of jazzing it up a bit, like did it.
You're doing your own rendition, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then I started playing in bands. And then, of course, my parents, my dad changed jobs and we moved to the East Midlands because I was living in Scotland, born in Aberdeen, brought up near Edinburgh. But parents moved to the East Midlands. I stayed to finish school and I followed them down and ended up in Nottingham playing saxophone in bands, some pretty good bands that got attention of some record labels. And then by chance, the local record shop in Nottingham that I was always in.
Wait, reverse back. Which bands were picked up by record?
No, we didn't. We weren't picked up. We had people coming to check us out, and we supported some people as well. But that's another story for another time, or another podcast, I think.
Because because everybody loves stardom. Is it any big? Is there any really big one that got picked up?
No. We had a couple of records out. And we did some tours and stuff, but nothing.
Wait, you were
massive.
In a rock band?
We're what? Sorry,
you were in a rock band?
It wasn't a rock band. It was a kind of like rocky type funk. Like remember, like bands like Orange Juice,
sure,
like Rip It Up, that kind of funk, a certain ratio, that type of vibe. That's what we did.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, so while I was doing that in Nottingham, I was hanging out in a record shop called Select-A-Disc, and again, I couldn't believe my luck. One day I'm in the record shop and the manager goes, "You're always in here. Are you free now?" I said, "Why?" "Well, we're short staffed. Do you want to help out behind the counter?" And I went, "Well, yeah, I did this as a kid." So I knew how everything worked. And I ended up getting a full-time job there. And they put me in charge of the singles and second-hand department, right? Now, imagine that. Exactly. You look at when I say second-hand, I know, because people would come in and go, hey, I've got these old disco records that I don't want anymore. And I'd be like,
bingo.
Nobody really wants these. I'll give you a few bucks for them, but have them for myself. But equally, people would come in with classic rock albums, right?
Yeah.
Like Love, Arthur Lee's Love, or The Doors, or old. There's an old compilation series called Pebbles, which was late 60s garage punk, right? Rare as hen's teeth. And this guy comes in, and I said, "Oh, I'll take them off you. Nobody wants them." So I was getting all these amazing records for myself and building up this huge record collection while playing in a band. Best job in the world. Well, anyway, the owner of the record shop, his office was on my floor, right? And his door was always open. Yeah. So he could hear the music because I was in charge of that floor. So when my colleagues were like, "Can't we put the new Sisters of Mercy album on?" I'm like, "No, I want to listen.
No way.
I want to listen to this old disco compilation, from 1975. I want to." So one day he came back from lunch and said, "I've bought a nightclub." And we're like, "What nightclub have you bought?" He said, "I've bought the Ad Lib Club."
Now wait a minute. This is what kills me. When he says buy a nightclub, it's not like he just spent £500 to buy a club. This is a big thing to do.
It was, yeah. Well, see, in those days, this is early 80s, 83. And, clubs in Nottingham, this is Nottingham, you had the Ritzy Ballroom, which is a big commercial club and other commercial clubs. But if you wanted to hear really kind of underground music or stuff that was a bit different, you probably had to go to London, right? Or go to a club called Rock City in Nottingham on student night. So anyway, he said he'd bought the Ad Lib Club, and we were like, "You're crazy. That's what was called a blues club, a reggae club." And it was great. It was you would sometimes go in there if you had the courage, plucked up the courage and had a few beers. You'd go in there with your friends late at night, and it would be thick with smoke and just played amazing dub reggae, really, like you could feel in the bowels of your body. And we said, "Why have you bought that?" He said, "Well, don't worry, I'm going to rename it the Garage Club, and I'm going to relaunch it as this cool underground club, playing great, music." And we're like, "Well, who's going to DJ?" And he said, "You are." And I said, "Whoa, hang on, I'm not a DJ." He goes, No, you are. The music you play in the store is fantastic, and you play in a band, so just think of it in the same way. Now, I was 19. I'd never DJ'd. The only time I DJ'd is like if you went clubbing, everyone would be back to my house and I would take charge of the music, right? And everyone used to love what I played. And I didn't want to lose my job in the record store. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And pretty much immediately I thought, oh, this is for me. This is exactly what I want to do, because I got more money than I did in the band because I didn't have to share the money with anyone. I didn't have to hire a van and help set the equipment up. I didn't have to rehearse in a cold basement of a bar. We didn't have to pay the drummer's girlfriend to do the door and the guest list, right?
No expense. You had nothing.
Exactly. And I got.
But wait a minute. Hang on, Graeme. Let's talk about this for a second. You're in the record shop. So the record shop's becoming something comfortable for you. It's a wage every week. You're comfortable. Yeah. The fear of becoming a DJ, you must have got nervous. You're like, wait a minute. Before you experience it, but that initial reaction was like, oh my God.
I didn't want to do it, but I thought I love my record shop job. I don't want to lose that. So he said, you can borrow some stuff from the shop, from the store, and you can go home early and get some records. And I remember going home and going to the grocery store around the corner and saying, those wooden boxes you have out the front that you put vegetables and fruit in? Do you have any I can borrow to put my records in? And so I mean, this wasn't like New York where you could go and buy containers for vinyl. This was the UK, and so things like that didn't exist. And I got a taxi to the club, and the decks were two belt driven Citronic decks with a built-in mixer behind the bar.
Yeah, that's that one system, right? The setup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And all I did was play old soul, old funk, classic disco, and then stuff in the charts, but the 12-inch club mixes like ABC, Human League, New Order, Talking Heads, Blondie, mixing it all up, and just basically played music that I loved, and people loved what I played. And I wasn't nervous because I was just playing the music, and meanwhile people were coming upstairs to the dance floor and starting to dance. And before I knew it, it was 2 a.m. and that was it. And at the end of the night, I got £25 to myself, right? £25. And after about a few weeks of this, I had to make a decision because we had gigs coming up for the band. I still carried on rehearsing with the band. And I had to make a decision, DJ or play saxophone and sing in a band. And it was difficult because that's what I always wanted to do. I wanted to be in a band, a singer in a band, and I was. But this DJ thing was such fun, and it was making me more money. So I thought I could always go back to being in a band. So it didn't go down very well, but I gave up and became a DJ. This was 83, 84. And very quickly, within couple of years, it's when the kind of Planet Rock, Africa Bambaataa, Johnson Crew, electro thing started to come out of New York. And being the singles buyer, I could get all these in the shop and play them in the club. And then, of course, so that was really exciting time, playing hip hop bebop by Man Parrish.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. Fresh.
And then looking for the perfect beat by Africa Bambaataa, but then also going back to Talking Heads and a bit of Blondie and New Order. And then, of course, out of that, you start to get, before we came on air, you did sort of like Run DMC and then Big Daddy Kane and Roxanne Shante and all that stuff. And then, of course, in 85, on the phone to the distributor, one last thing, Graeme, I've got these 12-inch singles from Chicago and Detroit. I don't know what they are.
You're right. I don't know what they are.
Just give me one of each. If I don't like them, I'll send them back. And one of the first, obviously this was the early house tracks from Chicago and the early techno tracks from Detroit. And then eventually there was stuff from New York in there as well. But the first track that really struck a nerve with me, I put it on in the store, was Music is the Key by J.M. Silk. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible, because it's Keith Nanali's soulful voice over this robotic, stripped down but funky electro track that was one of the first Steve Silk early tracks. And when I played that and of course all the early house stuff was about 120 BPM, and of course all that early hip hop stuff was also kind of 115 to 120 BPM, and so they all kind of mixed together. But then, as you know, the odd 12-inch from Chicago, Detroit, New York became more than the odd 12-inch. It was loads and loads and loads, and it took over. And then by late 86, early 87, house started to take over. And then, of course, as we know, by summer 88, it started to kind of take over the whole of the UK. But
was still in Scotland playing at that time?
Yeah, there was a club in Aberdeen called Fever, which is a legendary club with an amazing, one of the first, kind of arguably one of the finest and one of the first women DJs in the UK, called Jackie Morrison. And when people in Aberdeen found out that I was originally from Aberdeen, then they wanted to book me, so I started going up to Aberdeen. But there was the Garage in Nottingham, there was the Lead Mill in Sheffield, there was a night in Sheffield called Jive Turkey. Then I ended up, so basically by 88, I ended up doing Wednesday nights in Sheffield, Thursday nights in Leicester, Friday nights at the Hacienda in Manchester, Saturday nights
in a minute. We're going to get to Hacienda.
Yeah, Saturday nights at the Garage in Nottingham, and I was absolutely loyal to my residencies. So as the scene started to grow and people started to hear about me, and I gave up working in the record shop, I used to get people. We had to because you're doing
a good job. That's a solid job. How could you give that job?
That's what my dad said. He couldn't believe it, and I had to sit down and go, "But Dad, by doing these 4 gigs a week, because by now my £25 had gone up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And by doing these 4 gigs a week, that's double what I get for a week in the record shop. And Dad, people are trying to get me to work Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays because I'm not available Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But it took him a few years to kind of accept that I'd done the right thing, you know?
Why. I know why. With that generation was the same with my parents. They never that a DJ can be an occupation professionally.
Well, no, exactly. Because when I gave up the record shop, I had to go and think, well, this is my business now. I'm a DJ. And so I went to my bank and said, look, my bank account, I need to have a separate bank account for my business. And they go, oh, you've set a business up. And what is that business, Mr. Park? And bear in mind, I was like early 20s, maybe 21, 22. And I said, well, I'm a disc jockey. I'm a DJ. And they kind of like, that's not a business, what do you mean? And I said, well, forget it then, forget it. And I went around every bank in Nottingham and got the same reaction, apart from one bank, which I'm still with now, the NatWest Bank. The woman in there said, okay, take a seat and I'll get our business manager to come and talk to you. And he was great. He said, right, I can help you do this and give you some tips and advice about how to run a business. And I've been with the same bank ever since. So, but you're right. People
are really loyal. You are really
I know, but the thing is, you're right though, because now I, as a senior lecturer, I can teach people not so much about DJing, but about working in the music industry. Right. Whether that is behind a mixing desk in a studio or at a live concert, or whether it is a radio production, or whether it's television production, or whatever, lots of creative industry stuff that people like older generations would say, well, that's not a job. It is a job now, and it's big business around the world. I mean, in the UK, the live sector is worth billions of pounds to the UK economy.
Everyone. And then they told all of you to go get retrained. I heard that.
I know. Look, for example,
I went, what? $1 billion industry? How do you retrain someone that has been doing this his whole life?
Exactly. I've been doing this my whole life. And I know we're fast forwarding the story here, but at the moment, I have got no income from clubs, from live shows, from DJing at all. But the government, I don't get a penny. I can't furlough myself. I don't qualify for self-employment support. Absolutely nothing. Thank goodness I've got a very small senior lecturer salary, which helps. My wife's got a full-time job. That helps. And we'll be all right for a little while yet if we start getting back to normal in the summer. But you're right. It's crazy that someone like me, who's paid no end of tax and national insurance all my life, I had to pay a big tax bill at the end of January for 2019's earnings. If I don't pay that, I get fined. I get a red flag against my account. But no, I had to pay it, but I don't get any help whatsoever. And it's absolutely makes no sense at all. It's a massive, massive industry. And I'm not the only one. There are people who work behind the scenes and freelancers and people who work in nightclubs who get nothing, absolutely nothing from our government. It's an outrage.
And that's why I go back to my father saying to me, are you going to be on the corner with your hat looking for change so you can play like the sax? I'll never forget when he said that to me.
Now, I did try busking when I lived in Nottingham before I got the job in the record shop. I did try busking for a while with my tenor saxophone, but I hated it because, what do you call a saxophone on its own? It's great if you're on your own and you're rehearsing your scales and doing some tunes and doing some riffs, great. But as soon as a saxophone is on its own in front of an audience, it's a bit boring. Yeah. A saxophone needs to be part of something else. Unless, and I apologize if there are any saxophone players who play in nightclubs, I can't be doing with it. And there are some very talented saxophone players out there I've heard in nightclubs, but I'm sorry, you cannot play with a DJ like me who mixes because you don't know if the key is going to change. How do you know?
Right.
And I've heard saxophone players go, and then the DJ will very cleverly switch the key, as the drums break down. And then they bring in the next record and the key changes. It might go up 3 semitones or something. And the saxophone player doesn't, oh my God, and it's a mess. Or you play like an instrumental of a well-known track because you're building up to bringing in the vocal, and the saxophone player's ruining it. No, I'm sorry. I know people do it and they make a living out of it, and good luck to you, and it's fantastic. But personally, it doesn't work. I tell you what doesn't work either, and this is a true story. In the early 90s, I was playing in a club in Bournemouth, and the promoter said, what's your view on people playing instruments? I went, percussion's great, as long as they're playing along with the same records I am. You know what I mean? You get some percussionists who are like, whoa, what are you doing? You know, but a good percussionist will always enhance a DJ set, I believe, right?
Agreed.
And this guy said, oh, great. And so he plays guitar, he plays bass guitar. I'm like, whoa. Bass guitar? You do know I'm playing house music and dance music that's very that's very bass heavy. What do you mean bass? Oh, you have to hear him. I don't want to hear him. Oh, he'll be very upset. So I actually went, okay, let's hear it. It was awful. He plugged his bass guitar straight into the mixer, into the mic input. I'm like, no, if you're gonna do it properly. So that was quite funny.
Everyone, here's one for you, Graeme. How about the guy that thinks he can sing? He's gonna sing.
Oh, listen, I know that is annoying. You get again, I know.
Quiet.
But you see, I know.
You
exactly. But you see, as my career has progressed, and I'm sure there's a lot of DJs, and you have to have specific things in your contract, and I have to say that, but I don't like to piss people off. So you say like, the promoter agrees that there will be no live musical accompaniment to Graeme's set unless agreed in advance.
By him.
So, exactly. So, for example, if someone goes, well, you remember Mike, the percussionist? You played with him last time you were in Hull? I go, yeah, Mike, he was really good. Yeah, great. I'm more than happy to have him, you know. But then when you turn up and the percussionist's got like 17 drums and 95 cymbals, you're like, no. But, there's a guy called Pav.
Oh, I played with Pav a few gigs around the world, man. He's the bomb.
He is. He's got like 2 or 3 pieces.
He knows how to keep in time with you.
He keeps in time, but he also shuts up at the right point.
Where's Pav? Bring Pav up.
Because he knows, because he'll go, oh, I know. And then he'll look at you and you can just look at him and he'll go, okay. And he'll stop. Or he can go on a tip, go really get into it. And you can bring down the volume and he can hear that you're doing that. And he'll go and do a little freestyle. And then you bring it back in, Nothing worse than a percussionist who's good and you think this is great. So you bring the volume down to let them freestyle and they stop and look at you and go, what's happening? That's like, no, this is your moment.
Right. Do not think. As English would say, do your worst.
Yeah.
So let's get into something very important. 2 questions I have. One, we want to know about the Hacienda because everybody wants to know. But more importantly than Hacienda is one part of the story. I remember getting that double album, Sound of the North, with Voodoo Decoy. Now, I remember reading in there, your name was mentioned along with Mike Pickering in the Hacienda.
I wrote the sleeve notes.
That's correct. How did that album come about? Because here's the thing about that album. Tony Humphries comes back from England, or I remember I went to England, I heard Voodoo Ray in that summer around that time. And he comes back, he starts running this record. No one can get it. You can only get it on your album. What was the deal with this at that time?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't remember. It was a deconstruction release.
That's right.
Mike Pickering was kind of the main person behind that. But it was just, there was so many people, because house music kind of exploded in the north of England, the Midlands and the north of England and Scotland. And I'd just like to reiterate that for anyone who's watching in the southeast of England.
Audience.
Well, yeah, but anyone watching from the southeast of England, it's a fact. In the Midlands and the north, it was going off.
And why?
First.
And why?
Well, because of the Hacienda,
Not only that, but because also the Motown sound and the soulful stuff worked. And the house.
Well, yeah, exactly. No, exactly. So people we're hearing what I was playing in Nottingham and Mike was playing at Hacienda, and what the Jive Turkey guys were playing in Sheffield, and technology. You know, they were reading that people like Marshall Jefferson, and Derek May and Kevin Saunderson were making this music on cheap synthesizers. I say cheap synthesizers; they were still pretty expensive, and people were just having a
cheap. They sound like toys.
Exactly, yeah. But that was the beauty. That was the beauty of them. And of course, a lot of people found that their older brothers and sisters had Roland SH-101s because they used to be in bands that were trying to be like the Human League or trying to make electronic music, and and drum machines. And they started messing around and making things. And it was the punk rock spirit of do it yourself, make your own music and put it out on your own independent label. That was only like 10 years ago that started happening. And people started pressing their own stuff up. And Mike and Deconstruction just put all this great stuff together on this North album, asked me to do the sleeve notes. And it just took off from there. But Voodoo Ray, I mean, the first time I heard that, when, you know, Gerald knocking at the door of the DJ box at the Hacienda got this record, oh my God, you know, just incredible. And the thing is, some records don't age well, but Voodoo Ray sounds as fresh today as it did in 1988. Why? Because it's unique and it's amazing. And you know, some people have copied it, some people have sampled it, some people have remixed it, but you know, Voodoo Ray.
Sorry.
No, exactly. Voodoo Ray should never have been remixed. I tell you, I mean, I love a remix. I love a remix that's done respectfully. But every now and then you hear a record that's been remixed, and you're like, no, just please don't. I mean, recently a lot of the Easy Street catalog has been remixed, and I love the new Michael Gray remix of the Divas In and Out of My Life. Incredible.
Yes, I agree.
But the remixes of one of my top 5 club tunes ever, Mafumbe by Cultural Vibe. No, don't do it. Leave it. No.
Especially the B-side from the original Tony Humphrey Zanzibar. That's at the bar.
Yes.
How do you touch that? That's just
exactly. It's about 3 minutes of
Tony Humphreys. Come on up, Tony.
I know you should get Tony on. Tony, yeah, he's a no
to me. He said no, and he's my friend. We'll get him.
Oh, you got to get him. You got to get him. Yeah.
So Hacienda, the iconic club that it was in Manchester. Can you give us the inception?
Yeah.
Who's behind it? And how you step into the life of Hacienda and where it takes you.
Right. Well, as someone who played in bands and worked in a record shop, I was a massive fan of Factory Records, the independent record label in Manchester that Tony Wilson, the late Tony Wilson, set up, home of Joy Division, home of A Certain Ratio, home of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, although they were from Liverpool, or to be more precise, the Wirral. And I loved that label. And when they opened the club, Factory Records, along with New Order and their manager, Rob Gretton, and a couple of other people, Alan Rasmus, opened a nightclub that had cutting edge design. Ben Kelly designed it, and Peter Saville did all the artwork because he was doing all the Factory Records artwork. I had to go and see this club, so I used to get the train up to to Manchester from Nottingham and go and see bands and think this is an amazing club. But it was alive.
Nottingham? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I was still in Nottingham, and this was 1982. It opened on the 21st of May, 1982, and it was mainly a live venue. They had the odd club night. Greg Wilson was one of the early DJs there, but it wasn't really a club venue. It was more of a live venue. And I still love going there. And in fact, there was a TV show, to go slightly off topic, there was a TV show in the UK called The Tube, which was based at a TV studio in Newcastle. I was a researcher on The Tube, and The Tube did a show from the Hacienda, and that was Madonna's first ever UK appearance, right?
Hang on a second. Let me just explain this to everybody. You heard what he just says? I was a researcher. I never knew this either.
No, you know what? I always forget it. It's a very small part of my life.
True House Stories on Earth, Gold Dust. This is Gold Dust.
I always forgot this because
researcher. True House Stories brings it to you. He's researching Madonna. Wait, explain what a researcher does.
Basically, there was a TV show called The Tube, and they put an advert out. They wanted new presenters, and I thought I could do that. So I applied for the job as a presenter, and I got shortlisted and got an audition and there was a guy called Terry Christian who I met. He ended up he didn't get the gig either, but we went up to the Newcastle and we auditioned and did camera stuff and introduced bands, and then you get a letter going, we're really sorry you haven't got the gig, however we'd like to ask you to be, because you live in Nottingham, would you be our researcher for the East Midlands? And what that meant was I had to look out for bands and in the East Midlands that I thought would be good enough to go on national television. And there was a band in the East Midlands, a band based in Nottingham called Fatal Charm, that were kind of an electronic band. And if you look online, they made some amazing music. And they were on the Tube, and I would get paid expenses to get the train up to Newcastle after work on a Friday, or finish early on a Friday, and go and hang out in this TV studio while the Tube broadcast live. And bands that were on there, you had like Simple Minds, U2,
right,
Fatal Charm,
U2.
It was Frankie Goes to Hollywood. It was just all the big bands at the time. Yeah, all that. But then they did a broadcast from Hacienda, and Madonna was in the country, and was at Madonna's first ever UK club appearance, live appearance, TV appearance at the Hacienda. Now, Tony Wilson, the late Tony Wilson, asked her about this many years ago at some industry dinner, and he went up to say, Madonna, Tony Wilson at my nightclub, the Hacienda, that was your first ever British appearance on television or in a club? And she just looked at him and said, like, I'm sorry, I don't recall. Typical Madonna. But anyway, so the Hacienda, I was aware of it.
She recalled. She knew damn well. You never forget. Listen, everybody, you never forget when you do your first ever. First time.
Of course you do. Like I remember vividly.
You never forget it.
I know. I vividly remember my first ever gig in New York, but we'll come to that. We'll come to that later. But I vividly remember my first ever gig at Hacienda. So basically, I was aware of the Hacienda, and then in 1987, ID magazine contacted me and said, we're doing a feature on this new breed of up-and-coming DJ who plays obscure music and has a big following. And we'd like to invite you to come down and be part of this article, come down to London for a photo shoot. And they said, there's going to be Nicky Holloway, Mark Moore, Jay Strongman, Judge Jules, Jazzy B, Jazzy M, Norman J, all of us fresh-faced, early 28, mid-20-year-old people. And they all said, and then there's, and Mike Pickering. And I went, Mike Pickering, I know that name. He's the guy who did the T-Coy record. And before that, he was in a band called Quando Quango.
Oh,
and yeah, exactly. Produced by the late, great Mark Kamens, right? So I thought, oh, great. So I said, yeah, I'll come. So I came down to London. And that's when I first met Mike at this photo shoot. And it's somewhere online, there's all of us clambering over scaffolding, really kind of cool ID magazine, black and white shots. And Mike and I hit it off. And we realized we were the only DJs who weren't from London or the Southeast. And we both had this little thing that we thought, yeah, it's really bad. The whole of the British media is so biased towards London and the Southeast. It's like they ignore what's happening outside the M25, which is like the motorway that goes around London. And we agreed this, right? And we shared a taxi. He was getting the train home from Euston to Manchester, and I was getting the train home from St Pancras to Nottingham. So we shared a taxi to the Euston Road and went for a coffee and exchanged our phone numbers and kept in touch, and agreed that we should do something to let the world know that let London know that there's loads of stuff happening in the north that they weren't writing about. And this was before house music had taken off in London. But it was big in the north. So he got in touch with me and said, let's do a night at Hacienda. Let's call it the Northern House Review. Let's invite all the media up. Now, I, at the time, had a record label called Submission, and I was releasing music under the name Groove. So he said, why don't we make a deconstruction night and a submission night and put some of our acts on, and you can come and DJ with me. I said, yeah. So this was a midweek in a February of 1988, and the place was packed. T-Coy headline, they played live. The band I was in called Groove, we performed live with our 2 tracks, Submit to the Beat, and I forget what the other one was. And I DJ'd, and it was amazing. And all the magazines and all the press came up and wrote about this. Anyway, I couldn't believe it because I'd never seen the Hacienda so busy, and I'd never seen it as a club.
Right.
But it was a club night, but with music on, with bands on as well. Anyway, that was a great success. And then about a couple of months later, Mike called me up and said, I'm going on holiday for 3 weeks. And based on, what I know about you and the fact that you play very similar music to me in Nottingham, and because we worked together in February at Hacienda, will you come and cover my Friday night while I'm on holiday? I said, of course. He goes, good. I thought you'd say that. One thing though, he says, what? One thing, you have to promise me you have to come up on the Friday before I go away. I said, why? I'll have to take the night off. He goes, you have to. I said, but why? I've been to Hacienda. You said we play. He says, no. Things are a little different. I'm like, what? Please. So I went up to Manchester and checked in a hotel, and then went to Hacienda. And then when I went in, oh my God, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before in my life. Because for once, for one, it was steamy, like and sweaty and hot, and everybody, I'd never seen anything like it. Everyone had this mad, wild look in their eyes, and everyone was wearing like baggy clothes, and this smiley was everywhere, and everyone was wearing bandanas. And I went up to the DJ box, knocked on the door, going, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Mike opened the door, and he had this wild look in his eyes as well. He said, "Come in, come in," and of course, within about half an hour, I realized what the difference was. And it was making sure my kids aren't eavesdropping. Of course, the difference was like ecstasy had arrived, right? Ecstasy.
Yes, the EP.
Right?
Yes.
And then I suddenly realized why he'd asked me to come up. And so therefore, I came up, and then I came up later as well. No, but then I totally understood what was happening. And then, so when I went up the following week, I knew what to expect. So I did 3 weeks on a Friday at Hacienda on my own to the most amazing crowd. I played from doors open till doors closed. And I played, a lot of house music and some hip hop and mixed it up. And you know what? Of all the nights I ever did at Hacienda, those 3 that I did on my own to cover for Mike, I remember those better than any other night. So then Mike comes back from holiday and he calls me up and said, "Listen, I hear it was a great success. I want you to come and join me on a Friday at Hacienda." And I'm like, "No shit, what?" So I did. Yeah, I did.
You must have really shit a pill from that moment right there. You'd be like, "Well, I'm getting a job." Come on, that's a huge.
Listen, I took it all. I took it all in my stride because everything up until that point in my life, in my career, I kind of knew what I kind of wanted to do, but all these things kept happening. I got asked, "Do you want to work in the record shop?" when I was at school.
Hang on, but you have to want something. You know how hard it was in those days to get those type of jobs that you were getting? You were getting like...
No, I know. I was aware that people were like, "I'm so envious of you. I'm so jealous."
People are dying just to get a chance to get in the door. You're already in the booth.
I know, but people say to me, "How did you get this job? Or how did you get this DJ gig?" I'm like,
I'm going to go work down at the till for the petrol station. These are like dynamite diamond jobs.
I know, but the thing is, I got asked, "Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "No, yeah, I'll do it."
No, I don't want to do it.
At no point, like I say, at no point did I say, "Please let me work in the record shop." I just got asked, "Please let me be a DJ." No, I didn't want to be a DJ. I got asked. And at no point was I ever going, "Hey, Mike, listen, if there's ever an opportunity to play at Hacienda, please let me know." He asked me. And then again, when the Hacienda closed in 1997, Cream were on the phone going, "Right,